NIO is certainly having an interesting start to the year. After launching the $110,000 technological tour de force that is the NIO ET9 sedan, they're now headed to the completely other end of the market with their new brand, Firefly, in its first car, the Firefly. This is a Mini Cooper-sized premium hatchback with a starting price of less than $21,000 and ambitions of European domination. Some of you might be surprised to hear me refer to this as a premium hatchback, considering it's got a pre-sale price of less than 21,000 USD, but that is the case, at least here in the Chinese car market, where cars this size and shape generally cost 30 to 50% less than the Firefly. The Mini Cooper Electric, which I think we can all agree is a premium compact car, it has the same starting price as this car's pre-sale price, as does the Smart Number 1. If the Firefly is looking to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the electric Mini, it will need to pack a whole lot of style into a very small footprint. But the challenge of designing something to compete with the Mini is even more difficult than it first appears. Whereas Mini has an incredibly iconic design from which to draw inspiration, Firefly had to start from scratch. The results of all their hard work is a design that has at least some thematic resonance with the Firefly name, because the lights, front and rear, are rather insectoid in nature. It's a little bit like a spider, but not a real horror-inducing spider, rather a cute spider plushie. I'm aware, by the way, that a spider is an arachnid and not an insect. I just want to make that clear. The last thing I need is another feud with the entomologists. This car is actually longer and taller than a two-door Mini Cooper. It's closer in size to the Mini Aceman four-door. The proportions of it are quite nice for a small car. It's got a nice pleasing mix of round and square shapes as well, and I think they've given it a very personality-full design. That's not really a word, but I'm going to use it in this review. It's got personality-fullness. That is really important for a car in this segment because it's going to be competing with cars like the Renault 5 E-Tech and the Mini Cooper over in Europe. Cars that have incredibly iconic designs from which they can draw. Now, that doesn't seem very fair to compare the two, considering these guys had to start from scratch, but that's what it's going to be competing with in Europe, so that's what we have to compare it to. Time will tell whether this thing is going to become an icon of design or not, like those other vehicles, but one area where I do think it's going to be able to compete with the European rivals is practicality. Opening up the electrically operated tailgate, you will find 335 liters of space behind the second row. Lay that second row down and you get 1,250 liters. And that thing lays down almost completely flat. That is better than both the Mini Aceman and the Renault 5 E-Tech. One thing this car has as a rear motor rear wheel drive car versus the front motor front wheel drive Mini and Renault 5 E-Tech is a frunk, and it's a heck of a frunk. 92 liters of space. It also has a drain plug, so you can fill it with water or ice and turn it into a cooler. As I mentioned before, most of the cars this size and shape here in the Chinese car market are 30 to 50% cheaper than the Firefly. And at first glance, they seem to have more or less the same style of interior, main screen, and digital instrument cluster. Those cars also seem like they should have lower specs, but on paper at least, they don't. Take the Geely Geome Xingyuan we recently reviewed, a car that again costs about 40 to 50% less than this one. Its center screen on the top spec is not 13.2 inches like this, it's 14.6, and its digital instrument cluster isn't 6 inches like this, it's 8.1. But what at first glance appears to be a similar or even slightly less contented interior, when you get down to it, start to touch things and really get into the details, it is a much, much nicer interior than that car. For example, this 13.2-inch center screen isn't as large as the one in the Xingyuan, but it's 2.5K. It's also got a UI and a UX that is far superior to that car, which already, because it's a Galaxy UI, is actually quite good. But I really like the design of this one. It's much more cohesive. It fits with the design elements of the car, not just on the outside, but also on the inside. That pill shape that you see all over the interior also appears in the center screen UI. It shows a cohesiveness of design that you simply won't find on those cheaper cars. It also has some very convenient two-finger gesture controls. For example, if you go up and down on the left side with two fingers, you adjust the temperature. If you go left to right, you adjust the fan speed. And finally, if you go up and down with two fingers on the right side, you change the volume. Then you have the material qualities, which are way, way, way better than you'll find in those cheaper cars. For example, in those cars, what you can hope for is to have soft touch materials on, say, the center console and the armrest over here. But in fact, on this car, pretty much everywhere is soft touch materials. Only place you're going to find really hard plastics are places you really, really won't touch. For example, farther up here on the door panel is a hard piece of plastic. But again, where your elbows are touching, where your elbows are over here, the door panel itself, the upper part of the door, the dashboard, the steering wheel, that is all soft touch material, which feels much more premium than that of the Singman and other cheaper cars. Now, I have previously complained about the use of cloth materials on touch points, and so I'm not super happy about the fact that it's over here, but honestly, it's not an itchy kind of carpet feeling. It feels like it would be okay to rest your arm for quite a long time, and I did as I drove about 45 minutes to get here. This cloth is also found on the seats over here. This is the Select trim. There are going to be two trims of this car that we know of, Select and Comfort. The Comfort seats are heated, cooled, and massaging here in the front row, whereas Select is only heated. You also, on the Comfort version, have a full vegan leather seat with suede inserts, whereas this is the vegan leather and the cloth mix. However, you trade a couple of those features to get something very interesting. On this Select version, you have a manually adjusted passenger seat, but you also get this. Yet another very interesting storage area. You also have a standard 14-speaker, 7.1 Dolby Atmos sound system. Now, that's double the speakers you get on those cheaper cars, and it's also 4 more speakers than the optional Harman Kardon system in a Mini Cooper. Other Firefly features that you're not likely to see on cheaper alternatives include a built-in fragrance system. Heck, even the interior ambient lighting feels much more subtle and high-end than the sometimes garish, sometimes nearly non-existent lighting of other small Chinese hatchbacks. I know I keep coming back to storage space on this thing, but it is an important issue on a car this small, and this thing's got 26 to 27 storage compartments. 27 if you get the Select and you get that under-seat storage. If you get the Comfort spec, you don't get that, so it's only 26. You've also got a decent-sized little storage area here, where you, in your armrest underneath, more storage. You have a single cup holder. I'd love to see 2 cup holders, but I don't know, where are you going to put it? Wireless charging pad right here, and underneath that center console, a pull-out sort of drawer magnetized thing where you can put even more items. As you can see, once I've raised this center armrest, I can also do this and move over to the passenger seat. Say, for example, you were parked somewhere that you could not get out of the driver's side, you could then exit from the passenger side. Before I sit in the back seat, I have to show you another, and I think the last interesting storage solution that they have in this car. In the back seat, if I pull this little strap, can I find it? There it is. You can lift up the back seats for another 27 liters of storage space. Let's talk about the space that you do have with this wheelbase. Honestly, it's quite comfortable back here. Leg space, as you can see, pretty decent, about 2 fists. I'm 1.75 meters tall, or 5 foot 9 inches, and I've also got about a fist worth of space over my head as well. That space starts to shrink if you lean over to the side when you run to the side here, but if you're sitting right and proper, you can put your feet underneath that front seat and have pretty comfortable seating position. One interesting note, the Chinese version of this car has 9 airbags in total, which is quite good for this class of vehicle. However, the one abroad, or the global version, will have 7 airbags, kind of the opposite of what you'd expect. You would think they would put more airbags in that version that's going abroad. The airbags they are losing, apparently, are the right rear airbags that would pop out right here. Still, you've got quite a few airbags left over. The rear row has a single USB charging port down there on the back of the center console, whereas the front has 2 USB Type-C charging ports. To be honest, this dynamic hoop design that they have means that there's a little bit of a pressure you feel from this being right over your head. However, the Chinese version of the car does have a standard over 1 square meter glass roof, as you can see. I've been told that the global version either won't have the glass roof or the glass roof won't be standard and probably will be optional. They haven't been clear about that yet. As a car enthusiast growing up in small-town America, I wasn't exactly exposed to a lot of European culture, but even my bumpkin self knew that Europeans love small hatchbacks. So if you're going to sell a small hatchback to those Europeans, it better be a good one. And that starts with the ride and handling. It certainly got the right hardware. McPherson strut up front, 5-link in the rear. That 5-link is something you don't often find on cars this small and affordable. It does not have the go-kart-like dynamics of a Mini Cooper, that is for sure. However, it's no slouch. It's got nice, well-weighted and direct steering, and the ride itself is definitely more comfortable than a Mini Cooper. You may be surprised to learn that it also has a smaller turning radius than a Mini Cooper, 4.7 meters versus 5.2 meters. Credit that, again, to the fact that it is rear motor, not front motor. That means those wheels have more space to turn, even with that giant frunk. Speaking of that rear motor, it makes 105 kilowatts or about 140 horsepower, good enough for a sprint to 100 kilometers per hour in 8.2 seconds, or almost exactly the same as the entry-level Mini Electric, but not as fast as the more expensive, higher-spec, higher-power version, and certainly not as fast as some of its Chinese rivals like the BYD Dolphin. This car has 10 cameras and 12 ultrasonic radars, and according to the brand, it's going to be capable of highway NOA, or navigation on autopilot, when it debuts. However, this pre-production car does not have those systems activated, so I'm not going to be able to try it out today. The Firefly squeezes 420 kilometers of CLTC range out of a 42.1 kilowatt-hour LFP battery. That's an energy efficiency of 10.9 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers on that same CLTC cycle. They are apparently undergoing WLTP testing at the moment, with an expected range of 330 kilometers and an energy efficiency of 14.5 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers. There was some confusion over the past couple of years as to whether or not this car would be able to battery swap like other NIO Group products. First it was, then it wasn't, then it was, and now finally they've decided that yes, it will, but apparently only on 5th generation NIO swapping stations. They're currently on their 4th generation stations, and as far as I'm aware, they haven't started upgrading to 5th generation stations yet. So apparently you'll have to wait for those upgrades to come in order to be able to swap, but it will be available over time. Now, battery swapping is a useful function in and of itself, but it also allows them to better implement their battery as a service sales strategy. This is something they've made available on all of their other products so far, and what it means is that you pay a monthly fee to rent the battery instead of buying it outright. That means that the initial purchase price of the car can be much, much lower. Again, they've done this on all their other cars in the past, so we expect them to do it on this car as well, and in fact, I'm told there will be a BAAS price on this car, but we just don't know what that price will be as of now. That's why I'm basing my review on the pre-sale price of $20,500 USD. The ability to drop that initial asking price is going to be very important because honestly, they're asking a lot of money for this car considering what Chinese buyers can get for the same price or a lot less here in the Chinese market. For example, the car that I mentioned earlier during the interior section of the video, the Geely Guillaume Xingyuan, currently China's best-selling car, by the way, it is larger than this car, but its top spec comes in at almost $7,000 less than this car. Chinese buyers can also choose from a variety of much larger SUVs at this price point, or even a little bit higher than this price point. For example, the BYD Yuan Plus, the BYD Song Plus, and the Geely Galaxy E5. As we've thoroughly established as well, they could also get a brand new all-electric Mini Cooper. Now, this is the part of the video where I fulfill my promise from earlier to revisit the price of that car. You see, it's currently priced, starting price, at $20,500 USD. Just like this car, but that wasn't always the case. You see, when it debuted in the middle of last year, it cost closer to $30,000 USD. But demand for the car was so soft that they had to do some ridiculous price drops. And even after those ridiculous price drops, they barely managed to move 1,100 units of the Mini Cooper Electric and the Mini Aceman combined in the month of February this year. In that same month, they sold nearly 30,000 Geely Guillaume Xingyuans. Now, there's a lot of factors involved in why the Mini hasn't sold that well, but I think a big takeaway could be that Chinese buyers just aren't interested in premium tiny cars. And this is a premium tiny car. Not every car needs to sell 1 million units in order to be considered a sales success. Take the Neo ET9 sedan that we recently reviewed, for example. It can serve as a halo model for the brand, showing off their technical prowess and maybe increasing brand image by going toe-to-toe with the likes of Mercedes-Benz. Firefly, on the other hand, they're an affordable brand, which means they need to sell in large numbers in order to have an impact, let alone make any kind of real money. As I think I've made clear in this video, that doesn't seem like a likely proposition here in the Chinese car market. As for Europe, well, it's got a whole different set of problems. There is a market for small premium hatchbacks like this in Europe, but I'm not sure that most buyers who are going to spend a little extra money to get something a little nicer aren't going to prefer to get it from a brand that they've heard of. Will this be the first premium Chinese hatchback to win the hearts of those European buyers? I don't know, but it certainly seems like a steep hill to climb.